Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your Fulham podcast from Down Under. Here today to discuss the 5-3 drubbing of Leicester, a bank holiday beach party as Fulham win yet again without Mitro. It's our last game without the big man, and we did it in some style. Goals from Vinicius, Willian, and Tom Kearney. What a game. Sammy, thanks for joining us tonight to talk this one through.
Hey, I'm here. It's late, but I'm excited. There's good things to talk about, very few bad things. It's a wonderful time to be alive and all that good stuff.
Lovely. And Dad, how are we going?
Yeah, good, thanks. Very entertaining game, and looking forward to talking about it.
Well, we need to turn your mic down fractionally, but I'd just put that down to excitement.
Doing that in the private chat, all right.
A really good game to discuss, though, and it feels good at the moment. This feels like the early stages of the season where, we were coming off the back of performances and just feeling confident, feeling really proud of this Fulham team, and it's another, 3 or 4 weeks now where Fulham have actually put in some really, really impressive performances. And look, there were some issues, I guess, that still are worth addressing with a performance like this, because conceding 3 goals to a team that's almost certainly going to go down is slightly worrying. But I also have to say Fulham did take their foot off the gas a little bit halfway through the game when things seemed fairly wrapped up. So let's crack on with it, though. Sammy, your just initial thoughts of this game and how it all panned out.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was really nice to see. I know we're going to discuss it more at a later point, but it was really nice to see Kenny in that Andreas Pereira role. I thought he actually suited that really well. If anything, I actually like him there to playing a little bit deeper. I thought all across the park, really impressive from the guys. I mean, you could tell in like the first 10 minutes, we were kind of playing a little bit hesitantly, but then from the second Willian scored that first goal, it just, I feel that Leicester kind of showed their trump card, and then from that point onwards, it was really off to the races. And I do feel bad because I do like Leicester, and I like the narrative of Leicester the past couple of years, but they let us give them a bollocking, didn't they?
Yeah, well, their narrative looks like it's very different now, and it's on a very different trajectory from the one where they actually won the league. It definitely looks like a club in a bit of crisis at the moment. Obviously,
Sad.
there's some financial issues there with King Power and how much money they lost during COVID, and then the number of players who are out of contract at the end of season at Leicester and putting in performances like that. It really just looks like a bit of a downward spiral for the club, which is obviously very sad when any club has a downward spiral, except for Chelsea. But Dad, let's talk about, Sam mentioned Willian there. Let's talk about that first goal. Interestingly, our first goal from a direct free kick since Joe Bryan in the COVID playoff final. Terrible keeping, but a really good ball from Willian. That's exactly what you get coached to do. Put the ball towards the back post. If a player gets a head on it, it should be a goal. If no one gets a head on it, at least you put a shot on target. You're not going to comment on it at all, or are you?
Sorry, my stream dropped out there, guys.
Oh, I just thought you were just overwhelmed by Jack's just beautiful insight. And
well, I can pretend to be overwhelmed and then come back in if you like, but like surprising, remarkable. If that ball was in the corridor of uncertainty, and it may well be, I still don't understand why he moved so late. It just, it was actually miles away, relatively, from the line. And he just seems to, it looks like he's just not concentrating. And he picks it up so late and moves so late, rather than does a really awful job of it. Well, he does do an awful job, but he moves so late. It's surprising.
Yeah,
just really surprising.
I don't know their keeper, but he's a very, very far reach away from Kasper Schmeichel.
Yeah, look, it definitely feels like a bit of an error to me. I mean, that ball, it's played into a really nice area, but it didn't have like any real fizz on it. it's just caught him by surprise because he seems to be expecting a touch, but he really should know that there's no players even close to getting a touch on that ball, and the ball just sort of bounces into the top corner. A great way for Fulham to start the game, though. I mean, how many times do we score after 10 minutes? And then just 8 minutes later, we go 2-0 up, and it's that man again. Sam, talk us through that second goal.
It was okay. Beforehand, it was a really well worked piece of play that almost let Reed score, and I thought Wilson just did really, really well at controlling the game for the majority of the first half, and yeah, he like when Vinicius is just on in seemingly inconsequential games, he just turns into like, I don't know, like fat Ronaldo, just effortless class for no reason at all. And yeah, I still can't accept him fully as the backup striker next season yet, but he is impressing. But it's just weird. It's just weird. Like I can't really describe it any other way. It doesn't. It's such. I love the B story of it, and just kind of like the secondary narrative of just his rise to prominence. But it's just so random. It's great though. Yeah.
What I will say. Sorry, I'll jump in and then throw across to you though. What I will say is that he's never going to be our first striker. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's tough to settle into a new league, especially when you come from, a league is playing in Portugal for one of the best teams in Portugal. So it had maybe a slightly easier ride. Spent some time again at a top team in Holland as well, where you're expected to win most games. Come to Fulham, where you're scrapping against some of the best defenders in Europe, potentially in the world. It does take time to settle, and maybe we judge Vinicius a little too soon. I think it's a different conversation to the ones we've had about Dan James, where he scored a couple of goals for us, but his skill level just doesn't quite seem to be there. What I'm starting to see from Vinicius is some beautiful touches, really good passing, some pretty confident finishing now as well. I feel like we're starting to see the kind of striker that maybe Marco Silva identified as a player that we wanted on our books. Dad, do you feel like Vinicius is maybe proving himself as an able backup?
Well, I've seen a number of people commenting that Vinicius is bullying poor teams, but I don't think that's true. I think this is all about confidence, and he's definitely got some skills. I think and Chelsea, which you could argue, but
they are a poor team,
he had a good game against Liverpool. So I don't buy the fact that he's a flat track bully in the sort of cricketing parlance. I think he's got some skills. I think early on, if he has one weakness, it's perhaps his strength or positioning for aerial balls being crossed into him. But now that we seem to be playing a lot more to his strengths, I really like what I've seen. Look, it's a really difficult question now for Fulham and Marco Silva to solve the riddle of whether he ticks the box as a backup striker, and I suspect it's going to turn on who else we can get our hands on for the money we have available, right? Because let's say worst case, we simply cannot either find or land a really good quality backup striker. I don't think Silva and the team are going to be depressed about the prospect of Vinny being a backup next year. I don't, because I think he's shown that he can play a part, and there's a few facets to his game, isn't there? I mean, he's definitely got the vision and skill for those silky little, almost Tom Cairney like balls, playing people in. He's got that.
I do think we have massively misjudged him as like a player as well, because I'm not sure about you guys, but I always thought he was going to be this very like boisterous kind of like Mitro-esque, but we always kind of knew he was a bit better with his feet. But he almost kind of reminds me of like Lukaku, like, because like Lukaku is like known as like this really, really big player, and like he's like 6'5". People just always assume that he's like this like bouldering, bustly kind of like dude, but he's actually got a real silky touch. And Vinicius is kind of similar. Like he's Vinicius, like actually when he's playing his game, he's all dare I say like graceful. Like there's a real like silky quality to the way he like sets up like some play, and like his goals that he's been scoring, they're just very picturesque and very nice. It's not like how he's just weird. It's weird.
I see a lot of Brazilian flair starting to come out from him, which
Yeah.
I love. I can't remember if it led to one of the goals yesterday. I feel like it did, or it might have just been one of the really good chances we had. But the ball gets played into him, and he basically backheels it out wide to Wilson. And it doesn't look like much at first, but when you watch it back on the replay, you go, geez, he's properly meant that, and he's played a perfect ball into the path of the player, and the defenders can't pick it up at all because it's a back heel. He's got his back to goal and somehow manages to pick out Wilson, and it creates an attack and opens things up. And we saw it with the goal.
I'm loving that.
The goal that Solomon scored against Brighton, where he sees the pass and is able to actually play the pass. And I feel like he really just didn't settle very well at first, but the culture of the group has been so good that I can see him starting to settle. And look, I'll throw to one of the comments that we've got on the live stream. Sorry to cover your face on the live stream, Sammy, but Steve Reynolds coming in saying, keep Vinny, but also get a more pacey striker also. I 100% agree with that. I think Vinny proved himself to be an able backup. I can see him coming off the bench and causing some issues now, similar to how AK-47 used to play, come off the bench and just bustle. And Vinny's got that more creative side to him, where I can see Vinny playing a really good pass through that opens up a move and opens up the pitch. And then bring in another player on top of that, maybe someone who is a winger cross striker. And I'm thinking we always throw to him, but Gyökeres at Coventry, who I'm sure will be looking for a move now. Coventry haven't made the playoffs as well. He's ready for Premier League football, and I think he'd be a great option. Someone who can play on the wing, but also can play as a pacey backup striker.
I do think that you make a really good point there, Jack, about the Brazilian flair in Vinny's game. And if you think about it, perhaps he was under so much pressure to prove himself, and the only way you really get on the board is to score goals. So he's just trying to get the ball in the back of the net, where actually he represents a lot more value to us than that, because his participation in goals has been noted, across the season. And it's so valuable that he's now becoming confident to release that flair. And I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
And what I really saw as well that I liked, I'm sure you remember his celebration after the Chelsea goal, how you could just see the emotion pouring out of his body. Man City goal as well, you could see, and he was stoked, obviously, because he scored against Man City. But he scored that goal against Leicester, and he just looked a little bit more composed. I really enjoyed that. It wasn't like this release of, yes, finally, I've actually scored a goal. It was, this is what I do. I score goals.
Well, and also maybe I have arrived. I arrived last week or the week before, and this is what I do now. I'm part of this. I belong.
And it was a lovely finish, and hats off as well to Harry Wilson, who didn't get on the score sheet, but he really pulled a lot of strings yesterday and was super impressive. His ball to Vinicius there, and look, the defending from Leicester is terrible. They open up spaces, and all he had to do was the commentators are saying Wilson plays this beautiful ball in behind and picks the pass perfectly. But when you look at it from goal to goal, straight down the pitch, the Leicester defender open up this huge gap, and all Wilson has to do is put the ball basically to Vinicius' feet. And he takes a really good touch and then passes it past the keeper straight into the corner. It was a really good way to start. And look, 2-0 up, 18 minutes gone. It kind of felt like the game was already gone. Did you feel like Leicester were causing us any problems whatsoever?
Look, we talked about this at length, and the while Madison, Barnes, and Vardy are on the pitch, not to mention Tielemans, but from an attacking threat, those guys are really good, and they were good last night. And so I was never relaxed whenever they got the ball. And Vardy actually, he looked quite hungry last night, which is always a bit worrying. He looked kind of angry, hungry, and
Relegation fight.
so sorry, yeah, absolutely. So look, they were terrible in both defense and even in midfield as well. They were pretty average. They was just giving us so much space. But up front, once the ball was in their third, they didn't actually look too bad.
Yeah, that's pretty Leicester though, from everything that I understand about them.
Yeah, I mean they're a very good attacking side. You rattled off a couple of names there, but you look at Vardy. He's getting on a bit now, but I'd say most teams inside the top half would probably take Jamie Vardy, even if he's
Sure.
backup striker. He'd be a superb pickup for any team. Madison, I can't remember how much Leicester signed him for. I'm going to say 30, 40 million.
Yeah.
He was wanted by multiple big clubs, still is wanted by multiple big clubs, and probably out the door. Harvey Barnes, another player who's had a couple of superb seasons recently. They're a good side. They just it didn't seem to be clicking for them. And
no, there are 4 good players, Jack. They're not a good side.
Yeah.
Well, 4 good players should make a good side. I think you've obviously got to be well, but I think 4 good players can carry a team, especially when they're attacking players. All you have to do is be, route one defensively and just be aggressive and win the ball and give it to those midfielders and let them do the job. And they should be able to close it out. And Tielemans as well, the other person I missed out. And, we've seen some of the goals that he can score and some of the play that he creates as well. It's just surprising that they're in this position and how easily they got pulled apart. I was very shocked.
Yeah.
When you've got that poor a defense leaking so many goals and 3 of your 4 good players are attacking players, then you're in the game of we can score more than you. And that's pretty hard to pull off against really top sides who can defend.
I did. I remember I did send you guys actually a good video about this, basically detailing.
Not Tifo again.
Yeah, I mean you brought that up. I didn't.
The Tifo slut returns.
The Tifo slut. but they were talking about how they've essentially had to sell players kind of before they actually wanted to. Like Kasper Schmeichel's a great example of one, and they've essentially really chipped away at that team just to essentially like maintain their financial position and keep afloat. And that's just, I think that's had a real detrimental impact psychologically to that team as well. I mean, you've seen it with us, like literally just the way that we lost Mitrovic, how much that affected us. So I imagine it's probably like weighing on them pretty hard, and to bring in the new players that they have hasn't really worked. And yeah, I really feel sorry for them because it's completely not their fault. Like it's just
well, it is their fault.
No, they were just subject to the pandemic.
No, it's quite a lot their fault though. They've come up with a system of selling players on and trying to make big profits on it, and it's just not sustainable. Look, they've got
if your management model fails, it is your fault. Because you're not flexible enough.
I mean, there's blokes like Iheanacho, Tete. I thought looked pretty impressive for them yesterday. Ndidi's, one of the best central defensive midfielders in the league. Harry Souttar, we know as an Australian, had a really good World Cup. Is a good player. Ricardo Pereira, right back, hasn't played that much. Soyuncu's only played 7 games this year, but he was one of the players of the season a couple of years ago. They're just in a bit of disarray. Their keeper Danny Ward wasn't playing. They brought Everson in for the last 9 games, and it's just not working for them. And things aren't working.
But seriously, Jack, I think back to your point, and which I'm going to disagree with, is that 4 good players not 4 great players, but 4 good players don't make a team, and that's what happens. You just can't pull it off.
I think they've got 4 very good players, and they've got a good enough squad to stay up. They've been poorly managed this season. It's as simple as that. They stuck with Brendan Rodgers for far too long.
Yeah.
And we've seen what it's like when you sack a manager mid-season. We saw it when we tried to bring in Ranieri to turn things around. It doesn't work.
Oh, God.
We brought in Silver, and we know how good a manager Silver is. It can't actually change your fortunes even after you dump a terrible manager. Like it's tough, and they're in trouble. But anyway, back to Fulham though. Tom Cairney gets himself a start, and how impressive was Tom yesterday? Sammy, he scores his goal on the swinger of a right foot, but what a finish!
Oh yeah, beautiful
that-
finish. Oh, did
was
you
gonna
want to
say-
go, Dad?
No, I was just going to say that's a little harsh on Tom Cairney. He actually curled that. I think swinger's harsh, Jack.
Hey, it's his swinger. I think we all know that. Even Tom Cairney admits
He curled that into the side netting.
98% left-footed, and he's got a right foot there. That foot's for standing only.
No, I thought he did great. I really actually liked him in a more freeing position. Like that central attacking like midfield role that like Andreas has been in all season. It just really bodes well for just confident players who can essentially just make some magic and give them the freedom. I often find when Kenny's like filling in for either Reed or Polina, he is kind of trying to create a little bit more. He's trying to maybe set up some more stuff. But it was just really nice to actually see him in a position where he can just kind of go. And I feel that like he's taken like a long time to kind of reestablish himself as a player. Even in like the championship last year, I still don't even think he was like fully cemented in like the squad because he was still ducking in and out. But yeah, for the rest of the season, I really like the idea of Cairney being in this role, and I've been quite critical of Cairney over the last couple seasons. So yeah, no, I was really positive, really beautiful goals, and again, I feel like a lot of like the way in which he struck those goals as well just really spoke to just his confidence and intuition as like a player as well. Like it was just really nicely taken. Like I remember last week we were speaking about I think Vinicius missed a pretty key opportunity just because he didn't have that extra just mental bit
Confidence.
of like, oh yeah, well no, not even that. It's just he just didn't necessarily have like intuition, and he just maybe touched it one too many times, whereas Kenny's just there. He just knows it. And it's just nice to see him just fully let loose. It was great.
What I was going to say, and I was going to throw it to Dad, I thought Dad might jump in there actually just to get on the Tom Cairney bandwagon, but I do completely agree with your point you make there, Sam. It was good to see Cairney further up the pitch. I think we're used to seeing Cairney come on for Reed or even Polina and sit basically between the two centre backs and try and dictate play from there. I really enjoyed seeing him further up, closer to the edge of the box. Loved hearing the crowd screaming shoot every time he got the ball, especially when he was on his hat trick as well. But it was just good to see him have that little bit of extra creative freedom, and he just pulled the strings. And we could say it from about Wilson, we could say about Cairney, we could say about Willian yesterday. They all pulled the strings and just looked really comfortable as a starting lineup. And it's starting to see here, or starting to show here that we actually maybe have a little bit more depth than we realized. And maybe the whole situation with some of these injuries, some of these suspensions has actually opened our eyes a little bit more to what we have around us and what we actually have on offer. And maybe we're learning more about our squad than we ever thought we would because of what's happened this season. And it might actually change the way we go into this transfer window, looking at players and not going, okay, we need to sign 3 or 4 good midfielders because we basically need, people to challenge for first team spots and backup players. Maybe now we're going into this transfer period and going, we just need one or two really quality players to help this side go to the next level. And you look at how much of a difference Polina makes when you bring someone like him into the squad. Imagine if you bring in one or two other players, and then behind them you have guys like Kearney, possibly Pereira sits behind them, Neeskins, Wilson. If you bring in just a bit of quality, I think I'm really excited by what I've been seeing in the last couple of weeks, because we're showing that as a squad we can do it against other Premier League teams.
Two things about Kearney I think are worth mentioning. Number one, it says an awful lot about his maturity and his inner confidence, that he's transitioned from being that bench specialist or off the bench specialist to suddenly stepping up and doing really, really well in a starting role and in an attacking role as well. And I think the other thing that I'd say about Kearney is that he is devastating against poor sides, because I think he just carves them open completely. Not that he isn't effective against really top sides, but I think against poor sides he's just too creative, and he's got those balls that just absolutely opens them up, and he really shows them up. And I think it's actually very, very good to watch and very entertaining to watch when you've got Kearney on form in an attacking role to feed those sort of balls through, and also to get on the score sheet. So it's great to watch. It's classic Tom Kearney, isn't it?
No, I agree. He really, and not to dive in too hard on Leicester, although they were poor yesterday, but he really does have the ability to put poor sides to the sword. And his close control is really good. His vision's really good. His passing is really good. His finishing yesterday was superb as well. Let's talk about his second goal, which came just after half time, which was just a lovely team move. Dad, talk us through the goal.
I knew you were going to throw me one that I probably, 8-goal game, 5 of which we scored, is going to make me a little hazy here in terms of memory. But I remember the finish. I don't remember the build-up all of the build-up that well. So maybe I'm not the right person to ask. Honestly, it was like, late in the morning.
I was going to say, got to remember, it's that happened at about 11:15 last night, after that very long delay at the start of the game. Ball comes in from Kenny
that's not enough of an excuse. Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay.
Oh, so the counter attack. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the big storm by Kenny Tete, and who does brilliantly. And I almost feel, I know we're talking about the goal, but I almost feel that there's so many people who've got on the score sheet. Well, actually only 3, but so many goals scored. It's actually very easy to miss talking about and really celebrating how well all these other people played behind them. But I mean, Kearney controls it so well, doesn't he? He slots it away. But again, how average was the marking? He actually had space. He had plenty of time as well.
Well, a big shout out to Vinicius there, because Vinicius actually peels off towards the near post and pulls a defender with him at that point, which does create the space for Kearney. But I mean, that first touch from Kearney just put it perfectly into his path, and he does really well to side foot that and put it away. And look, 4-0 at that point. It was already over at 3-0, but 4-0, the game was completely done.
The game is never, Jack. The game is never done. If you're considering bringing on Duffy.
Well,
whoa,
yeah, I mean,
whoa! How dare you besmirch the name of good Sean Duffy?
Maybe a little, Sean Duffy, good one, Sammy. Maybe a little fair. Look, Leicester did pull one back not that long after. Harvey Barnes got his goal. A good finish from Harvey Barnes. I almost thought it didn't cross the line at one point, but a bit of sloppy defending there. And look, I was putting together our halftime thoughts during the game, and I was actually thinking we were looking a little bit sloppy a few times, and thought to myself, if it was 1-0, I'd be a little bit worried, because we were giving up a few chances. We saw Leno pull off a handful of really, really good saves, and that goal did feel like it was coming. And not to use the old "we were on the beach," but I think when you're 4-0 up, you kind of do take your foot off the pedal a little bit, and have the crowd olaying every pass and cheering, cheering absolutely anything that happens. It is easy to get sort of caught up in the moment a little bit. So I think that goal was coming. And then we did see Willian after that just score one of the best goals of the season. I know we've seen a few belters this year, but that's just such vintage Willian. Dad, how good to see him cutting in from the left and just putting the ball perfectly into the corner. It's just beautiful seeing goals like that scored at Craven Cottage.
Well, we talk about this frequently, how much we enjoy the Brazilian flair that is sprinkled all through this team. And I reckon Willian is a huge part of my enjoyment of this season. No question about it. I love what he's all about. But can I say, though, that one of the things that possibly goes unnoticed here is the number of times that Polinia actually is involved in the early build-up of these goals. He's the one who gets the ball.
Yeah.
In at least 3 of these goals, if not 4, he gets the ball through one of those step-in tackles that he's becoming pretty famous for. And it not necessarily gets the assist, but he's definitely the guy who actually gets the ball, wins possession back, and starts the phase. No, that's. I was kind of hoping that he'd get his hat trick. He looked like he was odds on. And I must thank him as well, because he won me some money last night.
Yeah. I'm reluctant to sing too many praises of João Palhinha, just because I've got a couple of Manchester United friends where every time he has a good performance, they just tell me he's coming to us soon, and I'm just like, no.
I think he's better than that.
No chance. It's not Man United anyway. Why would they buy him? They got Casemiro anyway, who they think the sun shines out of his ass, even though he's not that good. But look,
I think I could be wrong, and I would never begrudge a player absolutely optimizing his earning potential during his career. It's their livelihood, after all. And you've only got, if you're lucky, you might have a decade playing football, and if someone's going to fill his pockets with twice his salary, can you really blame him? Unless he goes to Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'm just getting carried away with the storyline, but I actually think something's happening at Fulham, which is a joy to be part of from a player perspective, and I don't think those guys are going to leave too early.
We've got him for at least another season. In my mind, we've got him for at least another season.
I'd hope so. The only thing is, these top players, they want to win trophies, because at the end of the day, someone like Harry Kane, how good is it to be Tottenham's all-time goal scorer, be a loyal Tottenham man, but how great would it be to win the Premier League or win the Champions League?
Yeah,
and have it on your CV, because that's what you want when you turn into a pundit one day and they flash up your stats and your highlights from your career. You want to see 2-time Premier League winner, 1-time Champions League winner. You don't want to see Tottenham record goal scorer. It's great, but it's an individual accolade, and it's something that you've done all by yourself. You actually want to be part of a team that wins something big, and that's the only reason I can see some of these players leaving. And look, Polinia sort of falls into that category. He's 27, 28. He's got maybe 3 or 4 years left to do something like that before he starts to go, not downhill as such, because I don't think he's going to disappear off a cliff, but realistically,
he's reached the summit.
Realistically, he wants to be. If he's going to make a move, he needs to do it in the next couple of seasons. And let's be perfectly honest here: Fulham can't give him what he wants. He's a cup-winning player, and he's a top player, and he should be playing in the Champions League and should be showing off his wares and at the very highest level. And good luck to him when that moment comes. I just hope we get to hold on to him for a couple more seasons so he can help us become a stable Premier League team. And then I hope we also get a fair amount of money for him as well when the time comes. Back onto the game, though, guys. 5-1 at that point after the second Willian goal. A penalty to Jamie Vardy gets taken down by Leno. Slightly strange one. But look, it probably was a penalty. There's a very slight touch from Leno, but I don't think it's enough. I think Leno came far too far out of his box, or out of his 6-yard box to attack that one, and makes a bit of a rash challenge, sliding in on a player like Vardy, who we know manages to tap the ball away from keepers and win penalties. Fortunately, Leno makes a superb diving save. It's a poor penalty from Vardy. Just sort of echoed the afternoon that Leicester had been having. Dad, you wanted to make a comment there?
Yeah, I saw some commentary that tried to justify why Leno came. And, the suggestion is that the ball is over the head of Diop. It actually wasn't that at all. The ball is actually passed down the line, and Diop is going with Vardy. And Vardy hasn't torn away from him, but somehow Leno decides to come. I would have half backed Diop to sort of stand him up at that point and at least make it difficult for him. And I think Leno slightly misread the situation and thought there was more danger than there actually was.
I mentioned it to you earlier. I think Leno did a lot of sweeping yesterday. We saw him out of his box quite a lot. We saw him come to the edge of his box as well to collect the ball quite a few times, and he was very much on the front foot. And I think he just judged this one slightly wrong. It's so wide. Like, he makes contact with Vardy just on the edge of the box, so it's literally at the byline where the byline and the box meet. Like, you don't need to be out there as a keeper. If Vardy gets that ball, he maybe wins a corner, but realistically, Diop, you'd hope, should be standing him up there. And I think he fell for it a little bit and got pulled into it. And it's just a poor decision, which, look, it's fine. It happens. Keepers make poor decisions. Fortunately, we didn't get punished for it. But like I said, a poor penalty. But not long after, Leicester win another penalty. This time, Polina is the culprit. He does hang his leg out. It's not a huge amount of contact, but there's definitely contact there. So again, another fairly clear penalty for me. I think the referee, just on a side note, actually did a really good job yesterday. Maddison puts it away fairly comfortably. And then to finish the game off, Shane Duffy, who's come on as a substitute, bit of miscommunication with Leno there. Tries to cushion the ball back to Leno, who's running out to also claim the ball. It was pretty ugly, let's be honest. But when you're 5-2 up and you concede to go 5-3, and you know how Leicester have been playing for the whole game, it didn't really feel like nervous moments going into the final few minutes there, even though there were 6 minutes of injury time.
Look, a couple of things about Leno on reflection. Yeah, maybe that was a miscalculation, but you know what? I'm pretty comfortable. I'm happy that Leno is playing so confidently and possibly overconfidently in that particular case against Vardy. The second thing is that cushioned header. It's not that well hit by Duffy, and Leno actually he slips over in trying to. He sees the danger, and he sees. I can't remember who it was, whether it's Vardy or not, who's about to sort of pounce on the ball. And he actually slips over. If he doesn't slip over, he probably actually catches the ball and safely grabs it. So I think he then makes a save, and the ball spills free, and then Vardy puts it away.
Yeah, he gets sort of fingertips to it. There's a bit of slipping around, and like I said, it was pretty messy at the end there. But look, I think you can put a lot of it down to the fact that Duffy just hasn't been in and around the first team. We saw a few times with the defensive line, and Duffy you could see it was a dead straight line along the back four, and then Shane Duffy about 4 meters further back, closer towards our own goal, and just playing players on side. It's realistically, we're not going to see Shane Duffy probably ever again in a Fulham shirt, apart from sitting on the bench. So I don't think there's too many issues about where Shane Duffy sits within the squad. I think we're going to be looking for a better replacement come next season. But I think, the fans really enjoyed Shane Duffy getting on the pitch. And I think that was probably the most important thing for the day, because it was a bit of a party atmosphere.
To close out the segment, can we just draw to light Steve Reynolds' comment asking, is Duffy Elton's new Dan James? And I just like the fact that it has become a full thing now that the audience is aware of your selected hatred of certain players, and I could not be happier for this.
What do you mean could not be happier? You're the guy who loves to highlight it to create unnecessary and melodramatic drama.
Because you are transparent, my friend.
No. Sam
like a newborn baby fish.
Sam won't make a comment. Sam won't make a comment unless Tifo tell him to anyway. So
exactly, we can move on from
there. You wish you were paid.
I think it's interesting also to note that, which may not be entirely obvious from the commentary for those watching either online or on the TV, that the whole Hammy end apparently were singing for Duffy way before he came on, and then even after that little faux pas. And no, he is not my new Dan James. Dan James is his position is secure. Just to be clear. And I thought I didn't mind Duffy's little cameo at all. But what's actually quite lovable is that the crowd at the Hammy end continue to sing and enjoy his more than momentary appearance on the ground. So I'm glad that he got an outing, which could well be his last outing in a Fulham shirt.
Ooh. Jack, you're on mute. And Jack is back.
Good pickup. What I would say, just to close, is it was slightly disappointing not to see Luke Harris and Dibley Diaz get on the pitch, because it was great to see them included in the first team squad for the game. But I really thought when you're 4-0 up against a team like Leicester, who just didn't look like they were offering anything, it would have been a really good opportunity to give some of these younger guys minutes. And I know that we are looking to close out our record points tally and all that, but it just felt like there's no better opportunity to get a few youngsters on the pitch than being 4-0 up against a team who are basically in the bottom three and pretty much dead and buried. And it felt like that was the time to do it. And I'm a bit disappointed that we didn't see them. I don't know if you guys that.
I think Silva is signaling very, very clearly that he's not messing around. He wants every point and every dollar that comes with every point. And, if there's an opportunity, a clear air opportunity to bring young guys on, great. But I don't think he's going to do it come what may, just to give him a run out. And I think the moment Leicester started scoring goals, I think Silva just thought, hang on a second, I'm never going to be the laughing stock here of getting beaten 6-5 at Craven Cottage.
Sure. I do understand that. It felt like that was the time to do it, and it's a shame that we didn't see that. A quick look at the table. I won't go through the stats from the game because Fulham were fairly dominant throughout.
We won
comfortably. Looking at the table, Fulham's still sitting in 10th place on 48 points now. Brentford have played the same number of games as us. They're 2 points ahead of us. I did have a very brief look at Brentford's fixtures remaining this season, because I think Fulham potentially have a slightly easier run. Looking at Brentford's remaining games, they have West Ham, Spurs and Man City to play. Now, we know Brentford can pull results out of their arse sometimes, especially against the bigger clubs. But when you're playing the team who are currently sitting first and will need to win on that final day, I would have thought, to close out the Premier League, and a Tottenham side who are definitely pushing for European football. I just think it might be a step too far for Brentford, and it's possible Brentford only pick up, you'd expect them to take all 3 points against West Ham, but West Ham have been in fairly good form recently and picking up points as well. So similarly as well, Aston Villa, who are sitting ahead of us, they don't have the easiest run. They've got to play Spurs, Liverpool, and Brighton as well before the end of the season here. So with Villa on 54 points, Brentford on 50 points, and Fulham on 48, it's quite possible Fulham pick up 3 points against Southampton, 3 points against Palace, and 1 point on the last day of the season could actually see us take 8th place. I don't think that's out of the question now. I'm not expecting us to beat Man United on the last day, but and on top of that as well, I expect Brighton will pick up at least 1 point before the end of the season. So I think that's probably a step too far, but that record points tally is definitely within reach with the remaining fixtures we have. It'd be interesting to see how Aston Villa and Brentford go in their remaining fixtures as well. It's worth keeping an eye on because I'd love to see Fulham finish with 16 wins. I know 14 wins at the moment, which is what we're on, is the most wins Fulham have got in a Premier League season, which is just great to see. But how good if we actually finish this season with 16 victories? At that point, you're winning almost half of your games in a season, which is just a really, really good result. To have only lost 15 out of 38 games is, it's just something we should be really proud of. And I'm proud of our position in the table this year. Let's kick on and just have a look at some news now. Seems like a silly idea to spruik another podcast on our own podcast when we're always looking for new listeners and new followers. But a bit of news is that the Fulham Fix official podcast has been launched in the last couple of weeks. This one's hosted by Ivan Berry, who most people would know as the ground announcer at Craven Cottage, and Felix as well, who is the lead singer of the Maccabees, a season ticket holder at Craven Cottage as well. And they dropped their first episode last week. Second episode came out today. Haven't had a chance to listen to it with Paul and George Cooper, I think it is. But the first episode with Berbatov is just a great listen. I know Dad and Sam, you've both had a good listen to it. Your thoughts on the podcast and what it's like having another Fulham podcast out there?
Burn the competition. No, I actually really like them. Like, I genuinely really like this podcast, and yeah, they're doing something completely different to us. So, I really like their place in the Fulham podcast zeitgeist. They're gonna obliterate almost all of us in terms of like actual listens and stuff. But no, I really like what they're doing. I really, really enjoyed the Berbatov listen, and I'm genuinely very excited to just have another bit of content that we can get. But it's also just kind of deep diving more into like players and different people with their good Fulham experiences, I guess. I don't know. It's just nice.
Well, I think I agree with you, Sam, that really good banter. Obviously, guys know a lot about Fulham and they have very good chemistry. But what is really good is that they're actually filling a little spot, which is actually very difficult for any old podcast to achieve. And they have access to great players, past and present. And it's very difficult for any of us to achieve that. Hopefully in time, some great players, past and present, might deign to come and have a chat with us. You're welcome. But until that happens, it's great that content is going to be out there, because I will always find time to listen to it for sure. And I thought the Berbatov interview was really good. They really drew a lot out of him. It was a very personal, very intimate conversation, and that's the kind of stuff you want to hear.
But are they a father and two sons talking about Fulham? No, they're not, and that's our shtick. That's our place.
It's we started this podcast. When we started it, the main reason we said was there's just not enough Fulham content out there. We love Fulhamish, love Cottage Talk, love all the other places you can get content, but especially living overseas, it's tough to stay in touch with the team and stay in touch with the news around the team and listen to really good content and consume really good content as well. So I'm always going to be happy when something new pops up, even though it's competition for us. Let's be realistic. It's not competition because
Nah.
they're going to absolutely blow everyone out of the water. And so they should as well, because they're the official podcast. They got access to all these amazing people. And I'm just actually really looking forward and really excited to listening to this podcast and enjoying it, and loved listening to Berber talk. Excited for Legwinski when he comes on, because I think he's a real he was one of those guys in that little prime period when we first came into the Premier League who I loved, along with guys like Mel Bronk as well. And it's just exciting to have more content out there. And I think we don't look at it as competition. We look at it as something that just sits alongside That's So Craven and sits alongside all these other podcasts. And, hopefully at some point we can get them on the podcast as guests. And I don't think we're quite up to the point of getting on there as guests ourselves, but you never know. One day in the future, maybe. Let's push through. Look at some of the top tweets. Why are you laughing at that? I think I'm pretty interesting. I think loads the 750,000 Twitter followers Fulham have.
Well, I was just wondering.
Just hang us on.
Whoa. Rewind it back. We are not hangers on in this situation. Come on. Not having that.
Yeah.
I'm bringing all the fungus of cottage cheese whenever I can. Also, why is Steve Reynolds barring me from answering a question? Anyway.
We'll come on to Steve's question a little bit later. Oh, we'll come on to it now. Steve is asking, Sam, what's more important, the Southampton game or Eurovision?
Well, for me, it's actually Southampton. I'm not really sure why Eurovision gets chucked in the mix here. But, I mean, I appreciate Eurovision, but this is a Fulham podcast, Steve, and we will be serious.
Steve has picked up on you, Sammy. He's got you down pat. Let's have a look at the top tweets from last night. There's a fair few to get through, so let's rattle on. The first one here from Javier Garcia. I hope I pronounced that right. At Javier Garcia BPI on Twitter.
What a day. Anyone else see this? João Palhinha tackles Victor Christensen and Carlos Vinicius for good measure and celebrates it like he scored. What a guy. It's fantastic.
Excellent. Yeah, that's 150 million right there.
I mean, yeah, let's not talk about Palhinha leaving. I'll get emotional. On to the next one. A regular contributor on our... He doesn't actually contribute, but he tweets a lot. And
we make him contribute. He's our free contributor.
He's basically...
IBS is the shit.
At FFC_IBZ on Twitter.
Yeah. Just a small insight to Fulham fans. Dan James wasn't even on the bench today. I was going to say something. I was going to add something to that, but I won't.
I just know you just gave it gravitas.
Yeah, I know. I know. This is IBS's moment. I'm not going to take it. I think his Fulham career is done, especially when Mitro is back next week and Cabano, BD are occupying the other bench bench options.
Over to you, boys. I reckon his name is Ibs rather than IBS. I think we're giving him a pretty brutal nickname there. Look,
there's nothing wrong with IBS. It affects 1 in 5 people.
I think we've
gamble responsibly.
We've sort of argued this when we're talking about Vinicius, in the fact that he's been taking up that backup striker spot fairly well throughout the whole game. And we've seen it over the last few games as well. Dan James had an absolute dream game, and then got dropped and hasn't managed to get himself back into the team. So I think we can clearly see Vinicius is taking the spot there as a backup. And like you said, Dan James wasn't on the bench. I know it might have potentially got in there instead of Dibley Diaz or Luke Harris, but I think it probably does spell the end for Dan James if he's not getting on the bench when we're missing Pereira, Ream, and Mitro. I mean, yeah, I think he's done.
Yep. It is. Yep. I think. Say something, guys. I just sound
sorry,
bad
Dad.
weighing in here.
Sorry, when you mentioned IBS, Dad said, "Please gamble responsibly," and I just started laughing. So I missed a lot of what you said, Jack. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I've covered you guys on the screen, so I couldn't see you laughing. Tweedledum
That's great.
Look, no, but I think it is true. I think all praise to the guy because he had one really good game there. But I think that one game and goal doesn't make a season, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. One from Dale here at DeLorean FFC.
I think pretty much all Fulham fans would have taken 9 points from 8 games without Mitro. Yeah, absolutely. Good pickup and a nice little reflection there. Absolutely.
I haven't looked at it, but I think without Mitro for those games he was injured earlier in the season, we barely picked up any points. And it was always going to be such a massive challenge when you lose one of your best players or your key striker, at least, the person who scores goals which win games, how we were going to actually come away from that run of 8 games and get anything out of them. Because I remember before those 8 games, we were looking at them and going, we could pick up 15, possibly even 20 points. Maybe 20 is a bit of a stretch, but we were looking at those games and going, the only games I think we might lose are Liverpool and Man City, and we'd win everything else. To then be placed in a position where you don't have the man who's going to lead you there. There's obviously a bit of a hangover from everything that happened, and I agree. I think 9 points from those games without your key striker, and then also with a couple of extra injuries there, it's actually a pretty good result in the end. And I think everyone would take 9 points if you offered it up to them at the very start there.
No, totally.
I also think, though, that the difference between Mitro early in the season drifting out and being unavailable and for a whole bunch of games being off the boil and not fully fit is very different from basically having your back to the wall, some injustice, and after an initial wobble, when we were definitely rattled by it all. I think the team's got its teeth, the bit between its teeth, and have fought back and have kind of really proven that they're up for this. Not least because Marco Silva's just reminded everyone in the audience as well as the dressing room that we're not on the beach, and I think he's absolutely thumping that home. So it's not that surprising that we've started to fight back pretty aggressively, I think.
Yeah, definitely. One here from Tom Kearney, fully backing my statement about his swinger earlier on.
This actually is from Tom Kearney. He says, "Who says I didn't have a right foot?" with a couple of smiling and laughing emojis. Some performance from the boys, absolutely.
And I think we can all appreciate how much these guys actually are starting to enjoy playing together, and it really seems like there's a good team culture at the moment. And I guarantee he would have copped a lot for that swinger with the right foot there. The players would have really enjoyed seeing him score because I'm sure they all give him shit about being a left-footed only player because everyone does. But yeah, it's great to see him score with his right foot. And it was a really well taken goal. I know I called it a swinger earlier, but he did do really well to actually put that one away. One here from Fulham Fan News, at Fulham Transfer on Twitter.
And a couple of pictures of Vinicius, the redemption arc we all needed. Yeah, absolutely. And look, we've covered this pretty well. I think the lovely thing is I'm beginning to believe that, as I said before, he feels like he belongs. And that's starting to bring out that little bit of flavor, Brazilian flavor, which is really great.
Yeah, he's definitely taken on the role with 2 hands, and it's been tough for him. We've bagged him out a fair few times on this podcast. I'm not afraid to say that and admit it, but he's really bounced back and continued to plug away, and he's proved himself in the last few weeks, and good on him. I'm looking forward to having him around the club a little bit longer because he obviously really loves it. He's been looking for a home for a while. He's had a fair few loan deals in the last few years, and hopefully he's found a home that we can see him flourish in a little bit in the future. One here from Jack Collins, a Fulhamish man here. Jack J. Collins on Twitter.
This has been the least serious game of Premier League football I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, can't argue with that. Cannot argue. But you know, I mean, it's. I think it's also one of those things that you get 4 goals ahead, and it at this stage in the season, it's pretty difficult to keep a straight face when you're having that much fun. And I know Marco Silva would be furious that we weren't more surgical and, you know, really brutal, and at that point gone on to score 7 because the opportunity was there. But you know, it's that time of the season, isn't it, when not so much nothing to play for, but you're all over them and everyone's scoring goals for fun, and it's almost inevitable if you make a number of changes, you're probably making yourself a bit vulnerable, particularly if you're making a change at the back. Sorry, Duffy.
What? No, I think I said it to you. It felt like the result almost didn't matter. Like it was such a. It just felt like a bit of a kick around. The guys are having fun. Everyone was cheering. A few times the ball sort of dropped, and no one even went towards the ball. I don't know. It just felt. It's a fair comment. It felt like a very much a kick around or a preseason game. It felt like, you know, they were going to take another break for drinks halfway through because, you know, you do when you kind of build fitness preseason. It did feel a little bit strange, and it can be a little bit dangerous when games feel like that. I have to say, you can let things slip a bit too much, and I think we did let things slip at the end there, but fortunately it wasn't costly. One here from White Noise on Twitter. It's a retweet of one from Mark O. Sierra A, which is Bellissimo shirt on Twitter.
The quote, Fulham are on the beach quote comments after the West Ham defeat obviously really riled Marco and the players. Fair play to them for their response since then. Absolutely.
Yeah, and look, the tweet below is just showing. Obviously, it's not including the Man City and Liverpool games, which were just the single goal defeats, but it's the 3-1 win against Everton, the 2-1 win against Leeds, a 5-1 win against, or 5-1 there. It's actually ended up 5-3. But the fact of the matter is, he scored 10 goals across those 3 games, which is, you know, a team on the beach is not putting away 10 goals in 3 games.
Unless it's beach football.
Correct, actually. Good point. Another one here from our friend at Cottage Analytica, at Cottage Analytic on Twitter.
Yeah, and this is with a reference to Mickey Adams winning the Forever Fulham Award yesterday, or being awarded the Forever Fulham Award. It's hard to overstate how important Mickey Adams is to football. Oh, sorry, to Fulham. Appointed at a low point in our club history, he began the Renaissance, and he did it with nothing, no money, no big signings, just a lot of hard work. Everything that followed was made possible by this man. And, you know, obviously, as we were discussing earlier, I didn't see it. I stepped out of the room, actually. But I noticed that he did shed a tear when the crowd started chanting his name, which is really lovely. So it's...
Yeah, and look, he took over the club when we were obviously in the old Division 3 at a time when we were right near the bottom of Division 3 as well, and things weren't looking great for Fulham. And this was pre-Al Fayed, pre-Tony Khan money, and Shahid Khan money, rather. But it was back in a time when you just had to do it with hard work, and he really turned Fulham around. And, you know, as this tweet sort of says, without Mickey Adams, there's no Al Fayed coming in not long after, then Kevin Keegan and Jean Tigana, everything that led to it after that. There's no European finals. There's no Premier League for 13 years unbroken. And there's no this season, and the great times that we're seeing. There's no Riverside stand. There's no redevelopment of the ground. It's possibly a move from Craven Cottage to a ground share with QPR. It's things that you don't really think about it, but it really is a butterfly effect, and a lot of it has to be put down to the work Mickey Adams did back in '95 or '96 or whenever it was when he was saving Fulham. And so it's good to see him get the appreciation from the club, but also the appreciation from the fans, which is what brought on the tears, singing Mickey Adams' Black and White Army. And it's great seeing how much the guys and girls who get awarded this Fulham Forever award, how much they appreciate it, and how it's an opportunity for the fans to really let them know how much they mean to the club as well. And I'm glad it's something that Fulham do fairly regularly, and I look forward to seeing it go on long into the future, because there's a huge list of very important names in Fulham's history that need to be recognised. A final one here as well.
It's ridiculous.
And I believe this is actually Javier Garcia's image that he took, that Fulham then used from our initial tweet, our first tweet rather. This one's from the Fulham official account.
Yeah, and apologies to those listening to the podcast. It's quite a visual, this one. You have to kind of see the silliness.
I'm sure anyone who's jumped on Twitter has seen this one before.
Yeah. It's Mitro being Mitro. Is this man bothering you? And he's just reaching over behind Pereira's head and jangling the earring hanging from his ear.
This
Mitro,
is peak.
child.
This is peak with 9. This is like peak 9-year-old. You're already in detention, and you're just like annoying your friend just because you're a little bit bored. And it's like, what are you doing? You're already in trouble.
I think it speaks to the game that was going on in front of them. It's like it's a bit of a laugh. It's a bit of a piss take. People do what they want. You know, we're having fun. And Pereira's looking pretty serious there. And Mitro's going, you know what? I'm just going to jangle his earring. Why not?
Yeah, because Andreas Pereira like broke his leg, and Mitrovic has been a naughty boy.
Yeah, I like it. I think it shows a really good spirit around the group. And good luck to Pereira. Imagine turning around and telling Mitro to stop doing that. That's a scary proposition. Look, let's wrap up the tweets there and jump into everyone's favourite time of the night. Cottage cheese. What do you got,
it's
Sammy?
Cottage cheese. Is that a yeast infection? No, it's your daily source of protein. It's cottage cheese. There is actually a quick question that Steve Reynolds wants to drop. We can add that into cottage cheese. So, one striker you would want at Fulham at a reasonable price is the first question of cottage cheese, apparently given to us by Steve. Thank you, Steve.
Cottage cheese just showing its true colours all over again.
Yeah,
taking ideas from other people. Look, it's a fairly tough question, because the transfer market is so unpredictable in terms of pricing. You see some players get snapped up. Kenny Tete gets snapped up for bloody £2 million, whatever he cost us. Leno costs £3 million, and then Anthony Gordon goes to Newcastle for £60 million. Like, I genuinely don't know the true value of players. When someone like Dan James is worth 25, 30 million, how can you say anyone's a reasonable price? There's players who I think are on teetering on relegation who I'd have a look at. I'd potentially ask a question about someone like Jamie Vardy and say, you know, do you want to sit on the bench for a couple of years and be our backup striker, knowing that he can put away goals in the Premier League, or maybe even sit behind Mitro and you guys just faff around with each other and score goals. Notto at Leeds. I think if Leeds go down, there's some great players to pick up there, and he'd be one that I'd be looking at for the future, especially because he's very young still. But again, I have no idea how much these guys would actually cost in today's money, because I could quite easily see Vardy transferring across to a team for 2 million, and I could also see him going for 25 million. So I just don't know.
But isn't it simply a matter of who wants them? Because if the top 4 or 5 clubs who have the money want them, then the price is different.
Yeah, that's
if
yeah, you go, Dad.
No, I think it's simple as that. I've nothing more to say, really. I mean, for if I don't know, Villa wants them, or Fulham, or I don't know, Wolves wants a player, it's an entirely different price to if City.
Not really.
I think it is.
I know. I do get where Dad's coming from.
There's not that many bidding wars around where multiple teams want a player and they're one-upping each other and paying more and more and more for a player. It's actually more that a club just sets a value, and I don't understand how they set that value often. I think with a club like Leicester, they're going to have to set a much lower value because they're almost forced into making a lot of these sales, and that happens when teams get relegated quite a lot. But there just seems to be no rhyme and reason to setting prices because I can't remember what Man City paid for Alvarez. I think it was something fairly low though, off the top of my
Yeah.
head. And you're saying because it's Man City, the price goes up, but that's just not the case. Like I'm trying to work out exactly how much he paid for him. Doing a quick Google here, but I think they paid about 12 million for him, and
Yeah.
we paid double that for Polina, and they've
Yeah.
picked up a World Cup winner.
Yeah.
Like it's no rhyme and reason, and it's kind of a bit of luck. There's a bit of skill there in identifying the right players in the first place, but then it's just picking up on the team and giving good offerings in terms of installments and things like that, and picking up good players.
But
Yeah,
the
for
other
me, I was-
dimension is surely that if Alvarez has an opportunity to go to Man City, he takes it and is not interested in anyone else. And if Man City, if someone else then expresses an interest, could Man City pay more for him? Sure, they could. If they really want him, they'll end up with him. And so I think if a big club is dead keen on a player, they get them and they pay whatever they need to pay for them, and no one else gets a look in, which is just the market, isn't it? So I'm not
Yeah, I
whinging
mean, we
about it.
saw
I'm
it
just saying
with
that's how it is. That's how it works.
Enzo Fernandez going for 100 million or whatever that stupid price. Mudryk going for 60 or 70 million. Like
Excellent value.
clubs will
Excellent
pay.
value.
Clubs will pay over the odds for players as well. We see that a lot because they just identify them as a target. The other club doesn't actually want to sell them, and so that's when prices get hugely inflated. I think when teams get relegated as well, it's not a fire sale. We're not going to pick up these guys. Ward-Prowse isn't going to leave Southampton for 5 million because they've been relegated. He's going to go for 25 million because Southampton need the money, and they could just say, actually, we're going to hold on to him as long as he wants to stay. They'll hold him, and he'll be a Southampton player for even longer. They're not just going to let players go because they got relegated. That's not the way it works.
No, I know, but if in the case of Ward-Prowse, who's obviously got tasty skills, if they put him up for a reasonable value, there'll be lots of interest, and he will go. So you're right. If they decide to sell him and they put a reasonable figure on it, the market will out and will determine the interest for a player. So
I think his is a different one as well because he was realistically going to be leaving the club anyway at the end of the season. The more interesting ones are players like Jamie Vardy, who probably has another 2-3 years left on his contract. And if Leicester go down, he might be looking for another move. And other players like that who, Ward-Prowse from about September, October was gone. Everyone knew that this was going to be his last season because he was going to get picked up eventually. It's hard to say. I don't know who decent options would be, to be honest. I think there's a lot out there, but it's all about seeing what's available on the market because I don't think Fulham will overpay for anyone because that's not the way we run. So it's about finding out what kind of value is in the market and then taking advantage of that.
We do love a bargain, don't we? We love a bargain.
It's not just a bargain. It's we love a good deal. We love winning. Tony Khan loves winning. He loves getting one over, but it turns into gold when you get it right.
That's a bargain. It's called a bargain.
And so ends the longest round of cottage cheese we've ever done. So, in light of a tasty,
just quietly.
I'm not having that for 1 second. The Friends one was an immaculate round. In light of a tasty performance, let's compare some iconic items to some iconic players. So, the KFC Zinger Burger, Tom Kearney or Willian? We've really stepped down.
No, don't say we, you.
We're all part of this.
Burger, Willian, bit of spice. That's all.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, I got nothing better than that.
You okay? All right, okay. Whopper Burger, Bert Leno or Mitrovic?
Oh, Mitro's the Whopper.
Really?
Recently,
I think
Mi-
Bert Leonard's a Whopper.
no.
Bert Leonard's
Oh,
massive.
no, the Whopper is just all beef and brawn, and you know, well, I'm not going to.
Have
I
you met?
shouldn't say not a lot of class, but
No,
it's just
Whopper is
three
king.
pieces of meat, and that's
Three
Metro.
pieces of meat on your Whopper.
The,
Jesus.
the
It's a
Whopper is
cholesterol
the
bomb.
Whopper is the king, and Mitro is our king.
Okay.
There
All
you
right.
go.
I'll accept that. Bacon and Egg McMuffin, Harrison Reed or Tim Ream? It makes you think, doesn't it?
I don't. It's
Mm.
such a waste of my brain power.
Lean into it.
I will go with Harrison Reed because
I don't know why, but I
Uh,
agree with you. I don't know why Harrison Reed is an Egg McMuffin to me, but he is an Egg McMuffin to me.
I'm not going down that rabbit hole with you, Sam, but I'm going to go with Tim Ream because he's American, and that's where McDonald's comes from.
Okay, that's fair.
you can tell
Perry
he's
Chicken
completely
Burger.
given up.
Perry Chicken Burger from Nando's. Vinicius or Polina?
Oh, obvious. Peri
Is it?
chicken chicken peri
Yeah,
peri.
it's Portuguese.
It's Portuguese. It's straight off the Algarve beach. It's Polina.
See, I thought it was going to be Vinicius just because it's not necessarily what you feel like at any given time, but it does hit the spot.
Well, I'll accept the punishment for that because I simply haven't taken you to enough destinations around the world for you to know that.
That's quite all right. And finally, a Red Rooster chicken roll, Robinson or Solomon?
Robinson gets the job done.
Yeah, I can see that.
Ooh, well, I was thinking down the line of who adds a lot of mayo to their performances.
Oh yeah,
Who adds a lot of mayo to their performances? All right.
You're not
Rooster
familiar with the
rolls.
expression?
For context, for those non-Australians listening, rooster rolls is basically roast chicken in a very soft roll with oodles of mayo.
But maybe you need to also add the context of what does adding a lot of mayo mean, Jack?
Well, I think most people would know that. Sounds just
Okay.
useless.
So you're
All right.
going Solomon?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have gone either of those. So I would have gone Metro. Adds a lot of mayo.
What do you mean by adding a lot of mayo?
Do you not know that phrase, Sam?
I don't think I actually do.
Melodramatic drama.
Oh, okay. No, okay. I can pay that. I can pay that. No, okay. I can see where you're going. I think I'll go Solomon. And that's to close out the segment. And that is cottage cheese for today.
Well, I
just a word
don't know
from
what I
our
was expecting,
sponsors.
but
just a word from our sponsors, Sam. To repeat, you have only one task in a week.
Yep. And you know what? I come up with it probably like 10 minutes before we do this. But you know what? It's all about the energy that we bring.
Who would ever know?
the really worrying thing is he messaged us about 6 hours ago saying, "I've got one this week. I'm prepared. I'm ready to go." And you've come out with that. It's
have one. I did have one.
Yeah.
I gave it to you.
Anyway,
I didn't say it was amazing. I didn't write the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
What just guys, another good day to be a Fulham fan, coming off the back of some really good performances and looking ahead to not the toughest fixture list coming up, and looking at a few games that we should be winning from here, especially with the way we're performing. Next game we have Mitro back. The man is back. We've gone 8 games without him. It felt like a lifetime. Feels like we've just been struggling through since, but we've managed to pick up points, and we're coming back to Mitro time. And look, does he start? Vinny's the man at the moment. Does Mitro get on the pitch? I would have thought so, but it's going to be good to have our man back, especially when we play at the Cottage next as well against Crystal Palace in that last home game of the season. But I'm really looking forward to the game against Southampton this coming weekend, and then Palace the weekend after, before another grudge match against Man United to finish the season off. And we'll be there to cover them all. We'll be previewing the upcoming Southampton game later on in this week. Thank you again to everyone who's been interacting with us, listening to the podcast, sharing our content online. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate those joining along on the live stream as well. Big thanks to Steve Reynolds, who always gets involved.
What's up,
especially
Steve?
because he sledges Sam as well. Big thanks to John Hall as well, who joined in the live stream today as well. We really appreciate people getting around us and supporting us. And look, we really enjoy what we're doing at the moment. It's coming towards the end of the season, and we've got some big things planned for the off season. We will be taking a bit of a break around the middle of the English summer, just to work on our tans over here in Australia in the middle of the cold winter. But we'll definitely be continuing to push Fulham content out through that time, and keeping everyone updated with everything Fulham during that period. So, Sammy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's way past your bedtime on a school night.
Yeah, I'm going to go to bed real soon. Hey, Colm as well. Colm's just hit the like button for us, and I appreciate that. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm going to go to sleep.
Good idea, Sammy. Make sure you listen to the next TIFO coming out soon. Otherwise, you have nothing to talk about on the next podcast. And a big thanks to Dad as well.
Yeah, thank you. And can I just say, put it out there, in the next two fixtures, is it going to be acceptable from an entertainment perspective for us to see our team score less than 5?
Ooh.
Setting a benchmark now. Yeah, I'd like to see us keep scoring goals, although wouldn't as much like us to concede 3 every game as well. But we'll see how we go anyway. So, guys, again, thank you for joining me tonight. It's been really good to chat, and I'm looking forward to previewing the upcoming game as well, which we'll get to later in the week. So, everyone, until next time, come on, you Whites.